What if I told you that the God of the Old Testament, the one who demanded blood sacrifices, who drowned civilizations, who commanded genocide, was never the true supreme being at all? What if the Jesus you thought you knew had actually come to expose this cosmic deception, hidden in plain sight within the very scriptures we've been taught to revere without question? Tonight, we're going to shatter everything you thought you knew about the Bible. And before we go any further, if this resonates with something you've always felt deep down but could never put into words, type in the comments right now. I'm ready for the truth. Let me see who's truly prepared to have their reality transformed. And if you want to see how deep this revelation goes, hit that like button. Because what you're about to discover has been concealed from humanity for 2,000 years. For centuries, scholars, mystics, and Gnostic teachers have whispered about a shocking possibility buried within the Gospels themselves. They've spoken of a cosmic architect, a false god known as the Demiurge, who has held humanity captive in a prison of matter and illusion. But here's what they don't want you to know. Jesus wasn't just teaching love and forgiveness. He was revealing the identity of this impostor deity, pointing directly at Yahweh himself. This isn't blasphemy. This is textual analysis that scholars have avoided because the implications are too paradigm-shattering. In the next several minutes, I'm going to show you 5 undeniable pieces of evidence hidden within the New Testament itself. Passages you've read 100 times but never truly saw. Evidence that Jesus distinguished himself from the violent creator God of the Old Testament. Evidence that he came to free us from a cosmic tyrant, masquerading as the supreme divine. Are you ready to see what's been hiding in the shadows of Scripture? Then stay with me, because once you see these 5 proofs, you'll never read the Bible the same way again. To understand what Jesus was truly revealing, we need to journey back to the mystical schools of the ancient world, to a time when Christianity wasn't yet the monolithic institution we know today, but a wild, diverse landscape of competing interpretations and hidden wisdom. In the first 3 centuries after Christ, there existed a branch of Christianity so profound, so threatening to established power, that it was systematically hunted down, its texts burned, its teachers executed, and its very name turned into a slur. They were called the Gnostics, the ones who claimed to possess gnosis, direct knowledge of the divine. The Gnostics weren't heretics inventing new ideas. They were preserving the original secret teachings of Jesus, teachings that revealed a cosmological truth so explosive it had to be coded in parables and hidden sayings. And at the center of their theology stood a shocking claim that the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, was not the true supreme God, but rather the Demiurge, a flawed, ignorant, and even malevolent being who had trapped human souls in physical matter. The word Demiurge comes from the Greek demiurgos, meaning craftsman or artisan. The philosopher Plato first introduced this concept, a divine craftsman who fashioned the material world. But the Gnostics transformed this idea into something far more sinister. In their texts, discovered buried in the Egyptian desert at Nag Hammadi in 1945, the Demiurge is portrayed as a blind, arrogant entity who declared himself the only God, unaware of the infinite, unknowable true God existing far above him in realms of pure light and spirit. This Demiurge had names: Yaldabaoth, Saklas the Fool, Samael the Blind. But when the Gnostics read the Old Testament, they recognized him immediately. They saw his fingerprints in every jealous decree, every wrathful plague, every genocidal command. The God who said, "I am a jealous God," and "You shall have no other gods before me." This was the voice of an entity desperately trying to maintain control over souls he had imprisoned in flesh, terrified that humanity might discover the true God beyond his limited creation. The Gnostic Christians taught that Jesus, the Christ, was an emanation from the true God, the infinite source beyond the Demiurge's corrupted universe. He descended into this prison reality not to die for sins created by Yahweh's oppressive laws, but to deliver Gnosis, the liberating knowledge that would awaken humanity from the Demiurge's hypnotic spell. Jesus came as a revealer, a liberator, a cosmic revolutionary smuggling secret knowledge past the archons, the Demiurge's rulers and authorities that govern this world. The early church fathers, like Irenaeus and Tertullian, wrote entire volumes attacking Gnostic Christianity, calling it the greatest threat to the faith. Why? Because if the Gnostics were right, the entire structure of religious authority, based on the continuity between the Old Testament God and Jesus, would collapse. The institutions that claimed to speak for God would be exposed as speaking for the Demiurge, the false god of this world. By the 4th century, when Emperor Constantine established Christianity as the state religion, Gnostic texts were systematically destroyed. For 1600 years, we only knew about Gnostic beliefs through the writings of their enemies, until those texts emerged from the sands of Egypt, confirming that yes, this was a real, thriving branch of early Christianity. But here's what most people don't realize. You don't need the Gnostic Gospels to see this truth. The evidence is right there in the canonical Bible itself, in the words attributed to Jesus. He was speaking in code, using a language that those with eyes to see and ears to hear would understand. He was pointing to the Demiurge without naming him directly, knowing that the scribes and Pharisees, servants of Yahweh's law, would destroy him for it. And they did. The first proof lies in one of the most misunderstood passages in all of Scripture. John 8:44, where Jesus confronts the religious authorities of his day. Picture the scene. The Pharisees, the keepers of Yahweh's law, the ones who claim direct lineage to Abraham, standing before Jesus. And what does he tell them? You are of your father the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. Now, read that again slowly. Jesus isn't talking about some abstract Satan figure lurking in hell. He's talking to the religious leaders who worship Yahweh, who follow the God of the Old Testament. And he tells them their father, their God, is a murderer from the beginning, a liar in whom there is no truth. From the beginning. What happened at the beginning? Genesis. Creation. The God who created the world according to the Old Testament is being called a murderer and a liar by Jesus himself. The Gnostics understood this immediately. The Demiurge in their texts is described as ignorant and arrogant, creating a flawed world and then lying to humanity about his true nature. In the Gnostic text, the Apocryphon of John, the Demiurge declares, I am God, and there is no other God beside me. Exactly what Yahweh proclaims throughout the Old Testament. But this declaration itself is the lie, because the Demiurge is blind to the true God above him. Think about what happens in Genesis. The serpent tells Eve that if she eats from the tree of knowledge, she won't die. She'll become like God, knowing good and evil. Yahweh says she'll die. Who's telling the truth? Adam and Eve eat the fruit, gain knowledge, and don't die that day. The serpent was right. Yahweh then banishes them, afraid they might also eat from the tree of life and become immortal like the gods. He's threatened by human enlightenment. Does this sound like an all-knowing, benevolent, supreme being? Or does it sound like a jealous warden terrified of his prisoners escaping? The second proof emerges from Jesus' revolutionary statement in Matthew 5:38-39. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, Do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. Notice the structure. You have heard it said, but I say to you. Jesus is directly contradicting the Mosaic law, the law given by Yahweh himself. Throughout the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus uses this formula again and again. You have heard it was said to those of old, but I say to you. He's not fulfilling the Old Testament law, he's overturning it. He's revealing that the old commandments came from a lesser deity, a God of vengeance and tribal warfare, not from the true God of infinite love and forgiveness. The God Jesus describes as your Father in heaven who makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good is radically different from the Yahweh who sends plagues, demands burnt offerings, and commands the slaughter of entire populations, including children and livestock. Consider the bloodshed sanctioned by Yahweh. In 1 Samuel 15:3, God commands Saul, "Now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey." This is genocide commanded by God. When Saul shows mercy and spares the king and the best livestock, Yahweh rejects him as king for not being thorough enough in the slaughter. Can you reconcile this God with the Jesus who said, "Let the little children come to me," and "Blessed are the merciful"? The cognitive dissonance has tortured theologians for centuries. They've invented elaborate justifications, claiming God's nature somehow changed between testaments, or that we can't understand divine justice. But there's a simpler explanation. They're not the same God. The third proof appears in John 14:6-7, but you have to read it in the original context without 2,000 years of theological overlay. Jesus says, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. From now on, you do know him and have seen him." Philip then asks, "Lord, show us the Father, and it is enough for us." And Jesus responds with what seems like frustration. "Have I been with you so long, and you still do not know me, Philip? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father." Traditional Christianity interprets this as Jesus claiming to be Yahweh, but read it through Gnostic eyes. Jesus is revealing a Father that the disciples don't know, a Father completely different from the Yahweh they've been worshiping their entire lives. He's saying that by knowing him, they're finally encountering the true God, the one hidden behind the veil of the Demiurge's creation. The Father Jesus reveals is characterized by pure love, forgiveness, and spiritual liberation, qualities conspicuously absent from Yahweh's interactions with humanity in the Old Testament. The fourth proof is perhaps the most chilling, and it's hidden in plain sight in John 12:31 and John 14:30, where Jesus makes a statement that should fundamentally shake our understanding of reality. He says, "Now is the judgment of this world, now will the ruler of this world be cast out. And later, I will no longer talk much with you, for the ruler of this world is coming. He has no claim on me." Stop and think about what Jesus is saying. He's identifying a ruler of this world, and he's making it absolutely clear that this ruler is not his Father, not the true God. This ruler has dominion over the material world, the cosmos, the very creation described in Genesis. Traditional Christianity tries to identify this ruler as Satan, a fallen angel. But that creates an impossible theological problem. If Yahweh is the supreme creator, how does a rebellious angel become the ruler of God's own creation? How does a creature overpower the Creator's authority over the world? The Gnostic answer is elegantly simple. The ruler of this world is the Demiurge himself. Yahweh, the creator deity of the Old Testament. This world is his kingdom, his prison, his flawed creation. Jesus, coming from the true God beyond this cosmos, has no allegiance to this ruler. The Demiurge has no claim on Jesus because Jesus originates from a realm beyond the Demiurge's jurisdiction, beyond the material prison he fashioned. In 2 Corinthians 4:4, Paul refers to the God of this world who has blinded the minds of unbelievers. Again, we see this distinction. There is a God of this world, and then there is the God that Jesus reveals. They are not the same. The God of this world operates through deception, through the veil that keeps humanity trapped in ignorance. Jesus came to tear that veil, to expose the cosmic fraud. Look at how Jesus describes his kingdom in John 18:36. My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting. He's not talking about a future kingdom in heaven after death. He's talking about a kingdom that exists in a completely different dimension of reality, the pleroma, as the Gnostics called it, the fullness of the true God's domain. This world, the material cosmos, belongs to another power entirely. The fifth and final proof is the most profound, and it requires us to look at the nature of Jesus' death itself. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus prays, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me." He's asking to avoid crucifixion. Then he says something extraordinary in Matthew 26:53. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? Jesus is revealing that he has access to a power far greater than anything in this world, a power that could obliterate the Roman soldiers, the Pharisees, the entire apparatus of worldly authority. But he doesn't use it. Why? Because his mission isn't to conquer the Demiurge's world through force. That would be playing by the Demiurge's rules, the rules of violence and domination that Yahweh embodies throughout the Old Testament. Instead, Jesus allows himself to be killed by the rulers and authorities of this world. And in that moment of apparent defeat, he achieves his true victory. Paul explains it cryptically in Colossians 2:15. He disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them in him. The crucifixion wasn't a blood sacrifice demanded by Yahweh to satisfy divine wrath. That's the Demiurge's logic, the endless cycle of sacrifice and appeasement that runs through the Old Testament. The crucifixion was Jesus demonstrating that death itself, the Demiurge's ultimate weapon to keep souls trapped in the cycle of reincarnation and material existence, has no power over those who possess gnosis. When Jesus says on the cross, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit," he's returning to the true God beyond this world. He's not reconciling humanity to Yahweh through blood atonement. He's showing the way out of Yahweh's prison. He's revealing that the Spirit, the divine spark within each human, comes from beyond this creation and can return there, bypassing the Demiurge's authority entirely. Notice how different this is from the sacrificial system of the Old Testament, where Yahweh demands the blood of bulls, goats, and lambs to atone for sin. That system keeps humanity in perpetual debt, perpetual guilt, perpetually under the thumb of priestly intermediaries who alone can perform the rituals Yahweh requires. Jesus dismantles this entire economy in one stroke. He reveals that the true God requires no sacrifice, no ritual, no blood. The true God is already complete, already perfect, already one with the divine spark within you. The Gnostic text called the Testimony of Truth puts it bluntly. But the Son of Man came forth from imperishability, being alien to defilement. He came to the world by the Jordan River, and immediately the Jordan turned back. And John bore witness to the descent of Jesus. For it is he who saw the power which came down upon the Jordan River, for he knew that the dominion of carnal procreation had come to an end. What is carnal procreation? It's the Demiurge's method of trapping souls through physical birth, sexual reproduction, the cycle of matter giving rise to more matter. Jesus came to end that dominion, to reveal the path of spiritual rebirth that transcends the flesh entirely. When he tells Nicodemus in John 3 that you must be born again, he's not talking about accepting a doctrine. He's talking about a complete transformation of consciousness that recognizes your true origin beyond this material world. This is why Jesus spoke in parables. In Mark 4:11-12, he explicitly tells his disciples, "To you has been given the secret of the kingdom of God, but for those outside everything is in parables, so that they may indeed see but not perceive, and may indeed hear but not understand." He's protecting the gnosis, encoding it so that only those ready to awaken will grasp the true meaning. The masses will hear stories about farmers and seeds. The initiates will understand he's describing the imprisonment of divine sparks in matter and the path to liberation. Now, you might be wondering, if this is true, what do I do with this knowledge? How does understanding the Demiurge change your life today, right now, in practical terms? Because gnosis isn't just intellectual understanding. It's a living transmission that transforms how you move through reality. Let me give you 5 practices that can begin to free you from the Demiurge's grip on your consciousness. The first practice is radical discernment of authority. The Demiurge rules through external authority, religious institutions, political systems, social hierarchies that demand your obedience without question. His favorite weapon is guilt and fear. He operates through voices that tell you you're inherently sinful, broken, in need of salvation that only approved intermediaries can provide. Your first act of liberation is to recognize that the true God, the Father Jesus revealed, requires no intermediaries, no priests, no rituals, no buildings, no tithes. The divine spark within you has direct access to the source. Start examining every authority in your life that operates through shame, fear, or the threat of punishment. Ask yourself, is this the voice of love and liberation, or is this the voice of control and imprisonment? When religious teachings make you feel small, worthless, or dependent on external validation, you're hearing the Demiurge. When spiritual truth makes you feel expansive, empowered, and connected to infinite love, you're touching the true God. This doesn't mean rejecting all structure or community. It means developing the inner compass that knows the difference between life-giving guidance and soul-crushing bondage. The second practice is conscious separation from the material trap. The Demiurge keeps you hypnotized through materialism, the belief that this physical world is all there is, that accumulation of things equals happiness, that your identity is your body, your possessions, your social status. Begin a daily practice of disidentification. Sit quietly and repeat, I am not this body. I am not these thoughts. I am not these emotions. I am not this name. I am not this story. Strip away every layer of false identity until you touch the awareness that witnesses it all. That's the divine spark, the part of you that originates beyond the Demiurge's creation. This doesn't mean rejecting physical life or becoming ascetic. It means recognizing that you're a spiritual being having a temporary material experience, not a material being hoping for a spiritual afterlife. When you truly embody this, the Demiurge's primary weapons, death anxiety, scarcity mindset, status competition, lose their power over you. You can engage with the material world without being enslaved by it. The third practice is the cultivation of gnosis through meditation and inner revelation. The Demiurge wants you seeking answers outside yourself, in books, in authorities, in doctrines written by others. True gnosis comes from direct experience of the divine within. Create a daily practice where you sit in silence and ask the true God, not Yahweh, not any named deity, but the infinite source beyond all names, to reveal itself within your consciousness. This is what Jesus meant when he said, "The kingdom of God is within you," not in temples, not in scriptures, not in the afterlife, within right now, accessible in this very moment. Use this simple technique. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and focus on the space of pure awareness behind your thoughts. Don't try to achieve anything or experience anything special. Just rest in the knowing that is prior to all knowledge. In that spacious awareness, ask, "What am I beyond this illusion? Show me what is real." Then listen, not with your ears, but with your entire being. The answers won't come in words at first. They'll come as intuitions, as sudden clarity, as a sense of profound peace that needs no justification. Over time, this inner gnosis becomes your primary guidance system, far more reliable than any external authority. You'll begin to recognize truth by how it resonates with the divine spark within you, not by who proclaims it or how ancient the text is. The fourth practice is ethical action based on love, not law. Yahweh ruled through commandments, prohibitions, threats of punishment. The entire Old Testament legal system is designed to keep you focused on external compliance, on behavior modification through fear. Jesus revealed a completely different operating system. Act from love, period. Not love as sentiment or emotion, but love as the recognition of the divine spark in every being. When you encounter a choice, don't ask, "What does the law say?" or "What will happen if I'm caught?" Ask instead, "What does love require in this moment?" This is infinitely more demanding than following rules. Rules are easy. They remove the need for consciousness. Love requires you to be fully present, fully aware, fully responsible for your impact on other souls traveling through this material prison with you. The Demiurge creates separation, us versus them, saved versus damned, chosen versus rejected. The true God recognizes only unity, only the one divine consciousness experiencing itself through infinite forms. When you act from this recognition, you naturally stop causing harm. Not because you'll be punished, but because harming another is harming yourself. Dimming another divine spark is dimming your own light. The fifth practice is sovereign creativity, as rebellion against the Demiurge. Here's something the powers of this world don't want you to understand. True creativity is a divine attribute that connects you directly to the source. When you create something genuinely new, art, music, ideas, solutions, beauty, you're channeling the creative power of the true God, not the Demiurge. The Demiurge can only copy, manipulate, and recombine what already exists. He's a craftsman, not a true creator. But you carry the spark of the actual creator within you. Engage in creative practice not for money, not for fame, not for likes or validation, but as a spiritual discipline that reconnects you with your divine nature. Write, paint, dance, build, compose, invent. Anything that brings something into existence that didn't exist before. In those moments of pure creative flow, you're literally escaping the Demiurge's prison. You're accessing a power beyond his material realm. This is why oppressive systems always seek to control art and crush creativity. They know it's dangerous to their control. When you combine these 5 practices, discerning authority, disidentifying from matter, cultivating inner gnosis, acting from love, and engaging in sovereign creativity. You begin to live as Jesus lived, in this world, but not of it. You navigate the Demiurge's domain without being ruled by it. You recognize the prison while discovering you've always had the key. This path isn't easy. The Demiurge's archons, the systems and structures of control, will push back. You'll face ridicule, isolation, doubt. People invested in the old paradigm will call you deceived, arrogant, dangerous, just as they did to Jesus, just as they did to every Gnostic teacher throughout history. But remember, you're not fighting against flesh and blood. You're awakening from a cosmic dream of separation into the reality of divine union. We stand at the end of a revelation that changes everything. We've examined 5 proofs hidden within the canonical Bible itself. Proofs that Jesus distinguished himself from Yahweh, that he identified a ruler of this world separate from his Father, that he contradicted the Old Testament law, that he revealed a God of pure love utterly unlike the jealous, violent deity of Genesis and Exodus, and that his death was not a sacrifice to appease divine wrath, but a demonstration that the Demiurge's ultimate weapon, death itself, holds no power over awakened consciousness. This isn't about rejecting spirituality or abandoning your search for truth. This is about deepening it beyond the comfortable lies we've been fed, beyond the sanitized versions of Scripture that erase the contradictions and smooth over the troubling passages. This is about taking Jesus seriously when he said he came to bring not peace but a sword, to set father against son, to divide households. He was dividing those who would remain asleep in the Demiurge's dream from those ready to awaken to reality beyond the veil. The Gnostics were persecuted and destroyed not because they were wrong, but because they were dangerously right. They threatened the entire power structure built on humanity's ignorance of their true divine nature. For 2,000 years, institutions have profited from your belief that you're broken, sinful, separated from God, and in need of their intervention. But what if you've never been separated? What if the divine spark has been within you all along, waiting only for you to remember? Tonight, you've been given eyes to see what was always there. You've been shown that the God who drowned the world, who demanded child sacrifice from Abraham, who hardened Pharaoh's heart just to demonstrate his power through plagues, who ordered the genocide of entire peoples, this God is not the Father of infinite love that Jesus revealed. These are not the same being, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The question now is, what will you do with this gnosis? Will you retreat into comfortable denial, choosing the security of accepted belief over the adventure of awakened consciousness? Or will you have the courage to follow this thread wherever it leads, to question everything, to seek the divine not in ancient texts or religious authorities, but in the infinite depths of your own being? Remember what Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Not belief, not faith in doctrines. Truth, direct knowledge. Gnosis. The Demiurge rules through deception, through the substitution of belief systems for direct experience. Your liberation begins the moment you stop believing what you've been told and start knowing what you can verify in the laboratory of your own consciousness. I want you to sit with what you've learned tonight. Don't just accept it because it sounds compelling or reject it because it threatens your worldview. Test it. Use the practices I've shared. Cultivate your own inner gnosis. Read the scriptures again with new eyes and see if the pattern doesn't reveal itself everywhere once you know what to look for. Notice how the God of the Old Testament and the Father Jesus describes are characterized by completely opposite attributes. Notice how Jesus' harshest words are reserved not for sinners, but for religious authorities. Notice how he constantly points beyond this world to a kingdom not of this cosmos. The truth is, you already know this in the deepest part of yourself. That's why this resonates. That's why something in you recognized it the moment you heard it. The divine spark within you has always known it was in exile, has always sensed that this material world is a shadow of something infinitely greater. You've always felt that disconnect between the God of wrath and the God of love, even if you've been trained to suppress the cognitive dissonance. Your awakening doesn't serve the powers of this world. It serves only truth, only love, only the liberation of consciousness from ancient prisons. And that makes you dangerous in the most beautiful way possible. You become what Jesus was, a light shining in the darkness, revealing what the rulers of this world desperately need to keep hidden. So go forth as a bearer of Gnosis. Not to convert others or start a new religion. We have too many of those already, and they all become tools of the Demiurge eventually. Go forth simply to be awake in a world that worships sleep, to act from love in a system built on fear, to create beauty in a realm designed for control, to remember your divine origin in a prison that demands you forget. The ruler of this world is being cast out. The veil is tearing. The age of the Demiurge is ending, one awakened consciousness at a time. And you, right now, in this moment, have become part of that great liberation. Not because I've given you new beliefs to replace the old ones, but because you've remembered what you've always known. You are not a sinner in the hands of an angry God. You are a divine spark, temporarily clothed in matter, but eternally one with the infinite source of all that is true, beautiful, and free. Let that truth reshape everything, and never, ever let anyone convince you otherwise. If this journey has awakened something profound within you, if you're ready to explore even deeper mysteries hidden in plain sight, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Share this video with someone ready to see beyond the veil. The algorithm of this world, another tool of the Demiurge, suppresses this kind of truth. But consciousness spreads through resonance, soul recognizing soul across the noise. Until next time, stay awake, stay sovereign. And remember, the kingdom of heaven is within you, right now, waiting only for your recognition.